happy? What is something that makes you happy? And I believe that all of us in our hearts, we all want to be happy, because being sad is not fun, right? Being sad is not fun, and I think there's a desire in each of us to be happy, and we surround ourselves with things that try and make us happy, try and make us to feel happy, and we try and get more and more of these things to give us that boost of happiness, to feel good. But I wonder tonight, if we're doing all of these things to make us happy, how long do they last? How long does this happiness last? Does it last beyond doing this activity, or beyond doing this hanging out with people, or being alone? Does it last through everything? How long is it before we need another hit of happiness? Another hit of this feeling of happiness? Well, tonight, I want to help us to not just feel happiness, but I want us to help understand joy. Because you see, happiness and joy are two different things. Happiness and joy are two different things. And I'm not just making this up just because it fits into a nice sermon. But they are actually two different things. Chemically in our brains, we can see that they're quite similar, happiness and joy. We feel them in different places, but we can quite often mix up the two. We can think that doing this one thing is joy, but it's actually making us feel happy. I know this might be a little bit confusing, but let me get into it. So you see, the brain actually releases these chemicals when we have feelings. That's just what the brain does. Whenever we feel happy, whenever we feel sad, the brain releases chemicals, and that's the feelings that we're feeling. It releases that, and so our brain has a complex landscape of human emotions, and there are a lot of different things, and that's why we feel all of these different things. And when we experience joy, the brain releases these neurotransmitters, and so when we feel joy, it's such as oxytocin and endorphins, creating a sense of pleasure and endorphins. And I'm sounding really, really smart right now, and I love it. And these chemicals tend to hang around a little bit. They hang around, and they're triggered by excitement and bonding and positive interactions. And when we experience happiness, they're quite similar. But the chemicals that are experienced in happiness are serotonin and dopamine. So they're two different things. As much as you can have these different chemicals being released at the same time, joy and happiness release different chemicals in the brain. Fun fact. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with feeling happy. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that if we want something that lasts, we've got to find joy. We've got to somehow get this joy, this chemical reaction in our brain that lasts longer, that feels stronger, that hangs around. And I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying that we don't want to feel happy. Feeling happy is great. But tonight, I want to ask the question, are we mistaking happiness for joy? Are we mistaking happiness for joy? It's a real question. Today, I want us to help us distinguish the difference between happiness and joy, and also what it looks like to be joyful in God. Joyful in God. So this was a word that I got for the year. As I was sitting over the summer holidays when you guys weren't coming to youth. I was still working. I was still youth pastoring, still doing all this stuff, and sitting with God, just while I was away on holidays. And God really gave me this word of joy. This word of joy, and I was like, all right, God, what do you mean by this? Because I've always sat in that space of joy and happiness are similar. I sat in this space for a long time, and it's only recently that I've distinguished what they mean. But there's something inside of us that always wants joy. There's something inside of us that we try so hard to manufacture it, that we try so hard to make ourselves feel happiness for long periods of time, but it's not actually joy. It's just happiness. We try and manufacture it in ourselves. But what happens when we're at home, in our rooms, alone? Do we have joy that lasts, or is it a happiness that's fleeting? And why can't we have both? Why can't we have both joy and happiness? John 15 in the Bible says this. I'm going to stand right behind you so I get it right. John 15, verses 5 to 11. It says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you will bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you this. He gets to the crux of this. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. Your joy, that's the buzzword that we're looking for there. Joy. They're about joy. They've told you this so that joy may be complete. What does a complete joy looks like? It's interesting. Jesus in this passage is teaching his disciples. He's giving them a representation of what it looks like to be joyful, to have and to be connected to him, to be connected, to be a part of God's vine. If you picture right now, let's all close our eyes and picture this. Everyone close your eyes. Picture a grapevine. Very simple. Grapevine. Stretches out far and wide. And now picture some fruit hanging off of that. Some grapes hanging off of the grapevine. And then imagine the grapevine gets chopped and the fruit and branch fall on the ground. It's no longer connected to the vine. And then picture that branch and grapes shriveling up, dying, because it's not connected to the vine. You can open your eyes. Now, I hope that was more than just a picture, because we're explaining what it looks like to be connected to something, to be connected to God. Now, Jesus places such an importance on this verse to be connected and to remain in himself and to remain for a purpose. Now, verse 4 in this says, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself, must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. Do we want to, my question today is, do we want to be that vine that we were picturing before that is on the ground, that is cut off, that is not a part of the plant, of the grapevine anymore? Or do we want to be connected? Do we want to remain in the Father? I wonder, as we're beginning our youth year off, our school year off as well, how close are we to God in this very moment? How close are we to God? Are we remaining in him? Are we connected to the vine? Now, that's a very deep personal question. Are we remaining in him, or have we drifted away? Have we drifted away a little bit over holidays? Or would you like to come to know God for the very first time? For the very first time. To be connected to that vine, to be connected to this family. Right in this moment, God wants each of us to come closer, not for his gain, but so that we may gain joy. So that we may gain this joy that surpasses all the happiness, all of the other feelings of this world, so we can remain in him and have true joy. We can remain in him. Now, there was a time in my life, I was at a youth camp. Yes, I know it's hard to think that I was actually a youth once. I haven't always been this old. It's okay. I was a youth, I promise. And I was at a youth camp, and it was a couple of days in. And I was set to be worship leading this night. And I had my songs picked. We were about to go into practice, and I just really wasn't feeling it. Just was like, all right, there's just something in me that is just nagging, and I just don't feel as connected to God as I would like to before I'm about to lead this worship set. And I was like, all right, that's fine. I'm just going to do what I know, and it'll be fine. But I talked to my mate just before. I was about to go to practice and about to start getting everything ready, and I told him this. I was like, I'm just not feeling it. I just don't feel as connected to God in worship at this very moment. And he gave me this advice, and then he prayed for me. He gave me this advice. He said, how about you pray for the people that you're leading? How about you pray for these people as you're leading them? As you're singing the songs, as you're sitting in a chorus or an interlude or anything, just pray. Pray for people. And then he prayed for me right then and there. And it really lifted my spirit. It really lifted my joy in this different way of connecting through worship. And he prayed for this new joy and this new excitement to come over me. And it was just a really impactful time. And I went along to lead this set. And this was a big set as well. Like, this is like Saturday night of Echo Camp. If you haven't come along to an Echo Camp, come along. They're great. So this was like a big night. And I just was not feeling it. But God moved in this time. Not because I was giving, but because I was surrendering. Because I said, God, you've got to do this. I want to remain in you. I trust you. I want to be a part of your vine. I'm still connected to you. So Lord, take this. And then to this day, I would say that is one of the times when I encountered God the most. God came in and changed and gave me a new joy and a fresh touch to lead and to really worship, because I was remaining in the Father. Jesus says in verse 9 of what we read before, as the Father loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. Just as I have kept my Father's commands, remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be complete in you. Happiness comes and goes from experiences. Joy comes from being connected to the vine, being connected to God. This joy is not fleeting. This joy is not dependent on circumstance. This joy is not temporary. This joy is not superficial. It is not self-created. It is not separate from God. It is not exclusive. It is not conditional. But the joy of the Lord is long-lasting, rooted in relationship. It is independent of circumstance. It is expressed in worship. It is sustained by faith. It is not diminished by trials, and his joy is complete. When we remain in him, this is what our joy can look. This is what our joy looks like. It looks like all of these things. It looks like this long-lasting joy, this joy that is rooted in relationship. Joy begins and ends with intimacy with God. Begins and ends with intimacy with God. And when we're intimate with him and we spend time with God, when we remain in him, his joy begins to flow through us. Joy is not something that we can find, but it is a byproduct of a relationship with God. We can't choose to be joyful. We can't choose to be joyful over sad, but we choose to be in relationship with God, because joy starts with intimacy with God. Now, byproducts is something that comes from something that is also good, right? So there's a few byproducts in this world that we wouldn't think are byproducts of something else. So molasses, which is used in animal feed and cooking, it's actually from sugar production. And buttermilk, which you would use in cooking, if anyone's a chef here, is actually from butter production, would you believe? Butter and butter, it makes sense, yeah. Wood shavings and bark chips are from timber production. So what you see on your playgrounds, that comes from timber. It's crazy, I know. Straw comes from grain harvestings. Vegemite comes from beer fermentation. Don't drink beer, just eat Vegemite. Come on. Whey, it comes from cheese production. All of these things are byproducts of something else that is good. And joy is a byproduct of an intimacy and a relationship with God. You can't have joy without a relationship with God. We don't always have the ability to choose to be happy, but we always have the ability to choose a relationship with God. Because God is close, God is near, and He wants to know you. He wants to know us more and more. He wants us to be joyful. But He can't force that on us. That comes from an intimacy with the Father. Now today I wonder if we need to reprioritize some things. To stop choosing the happiness of this world, but instead to choose God. To choose a God that wants you, to pursue intimacy with God so that joy will be a byproduct of this intimacy. That we can feel as long as we live. Now this joy is something that is so desired in our lives. We try and fill it with happiness. We try and fill it with things that will make us happy. But joy comes from the Lord. Joy comes from the Lord. Kimmy, do you want to head on up? Thank you. Now I wonder today if there is a joy blocker in your life, in our lives. I wonder if there's a joy blocker. I wonder if there is something that we think is bringing us joy, but it's really just bringing us happiness. It's really just bringing us something that disappears as soon as the activity is done. I wonder today what it would look like to choose intimacy with God, so we can live in this joy of the Lord. I'm going to invite everyone to the front. So everyone's